3, 2, 1.
Oh!
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
That hurt.
Let's say you've got a budget of £60,000 to spend on your next car. Well, for that sort of money, you can buy a whole variety of cars that will fulfill a whole variety of purposes. But regardless of the type of car you choose, if you're spending that much, you might, quite rightly we'd say, expect it to be fun.
And more than that, what if fun is your absolute #1 priority? Which 60k car delivers it best? You still have a variety of options, and we've assembled what we believe to be 3 of the best. The thing is, each of them takes a very different approach to the job at hand. For example, you could have the lightweight sports car option. The Alpine A110 has just been facelifted for 2022, featuring uprated performance and more equipment. And here we have the A110S, the raciest version of the car with its sporty suspension and its more powerful 300 horsepower 1.8 litre turbocharged mid-mounted petrol engine.
Or there's the hot hatch option, the brand new Audi RS3. It packs a whopping 400 horsepower from its 2.5 litre turbocharged 5-cylinder engine, and 4-wheel drive traction helps it to smash out a 0 to 62 mph sprint time of just 3.8 seconds. All that plus family car practicality and prestige desirability too.
Or if muscle cars are more your thing, our 60k budget buys you the most recognisable one of them all, the Ford Mustang. Not only that, it buys you the range-topping Mach1 version with its adaptive suspension and an extra 10 horsepower from its 5 litre V8, giving it a total of 460 horsepower.
So we have 3 very different ways of skinning the same cat here, but what we want to know is, in terms of fun, which is the best. So to find out, we have come to the beautiful Brecon Beacons in Wales, where the roads are terrific, the scenery is stunning, and the weather is, well, it's highly changeable.
Now, these are very exciting cars, but this being a CarGurus UK video, we do need to cover the more sensible aspect of these cars. And that means assessing their practicality. After all, they are very different, and practicality will be an issue for some people. But don't worry, we're going to get through it as quickly as we possibly can, because we want to get out and drive these things as much as you want to see them driven.
So let's kick off with the Alpine. Obviously people don't buy an Alpine A110 because they think it's going to be a hugely practical car.
Absolutely not.
Interior wise, actually, even if you're 6 foot or taller, you're going to be quite comfortable.
It's quite spacey, isn't it?
It's pretty roomy. There's a few different storage places in there.
Well, no cup holders, no
cup
glove
holders,
box.
actually. I did notice the lack of cup holders.
No door pockets.
This boot is absolutely tiny. And then you have this space under the front as well, where you can get a couple of carry-on bags. Oh, I can never get this in there. That's outrageous. There you go. Right. You can get a couple of carry-on bags, which is good. What you cannot fit, which is troubling when you're coming to this part of the world, is an umbrella, which is fairly annoying. But that's pretty much it for the Alpine practicality.
Let's move on to the Audi, which is actually our most practical car. Now, lots of space up front, as you'd expect, but in the rear seats, lots and lots of headroom and legroom, enough for a couple of very tall adults to sit in comfort for long periods of time. Now, the boot, it is 100 litres down on that of a regular A3 because of what's going on the rear axle. We'll tell you about that later on. But it's still big enough for a family to use, and the access on this is way better than either of the other 2 boots of either of our other 2 cars.
And crucially, big enough for an umbrella.
There you go.
Mustang. Big car on the outside.
It certainly is.
It's a big car on the inside as well. Loads of room for storage and cups and stuff. Actually, these rear seats, you can get people in there.
They're not too bad.
Headroom's a bit tight, and obviously the roof is a rear windscreen.
Yeah, your adult friends might not thank you very much, but your kids will be fine.
I don't have many friends, so that's fine. And then the boot is amazingly big.
It's bigger than the Audis.
Yeah.
In fact.
Narrow opening.
Yes.
But you'd expect that. But no, I mean, even compared with something like a 911 or a Cayman or anything like that, that is a good car for taking stuff places.
It absolutely is.
Right, shall we go places?
Let's
Go
please.
drive something. What should we drive first? I do
Alpine?
like the idea of the Alpine. Yeah, all right, okay. All perfectly choreographed until the wipers went.
Right. Isn't it incredible in this part of Wales how there is a new thing along in the sky every 20 minutes or so? It's either raining or it's sunny, or it's just so changeable up here, it's ridiculous.
It just allows us to test the cars in all conditions.
Well,
Is that why we did it? It's now, I mean, we didn't come for the scenery or the epic roads.
Absolutely
Just
not.
You could do
Absolutely.
all season testing in about 3 hours in this place.
There you go. So, Alpine interior. First impressions?
Actually, better than I remembered it. I love the coloured panels on the door top.
Yeah, they're cool.
Bringing the exterior to the interior. And then just little things like these leather door grabs. I'm fairly sure there's something fairly cheap underneath there, but it feels
That's it.
nice and substantial.
It looks nice, doesn't it? And this, the steering wheel's all sort of stitched and Alcantara shod. That's pretty nice on the fingertips as well, to be fair.
But, fair to say as well, so Alpine is owned by Renault, for those not aware. There's quite a lot of Renault stuff in here.
I was going to say that.
Let's play spot the Renault bits. Go on.
Well, that parking brake is from a Clio.
Yeah.
I believe those aircon controls are Mach1 Zoe.
Yeah, I was going to say Zoe.
And these stereo steering stalk control things are every Renault from the mid-90s, I think.
We had a 2010 Megane that had those in it.
Brilliant.
So touchscreen wise, we do have a touchscreen. It's not the best. The graphics are a little bit basic. It can be a bit laggy.
Now, I was going to say those icons look a bit small. I'm glad you're here to operate it, so I don't have to, and I can just
You're driving,
concentrate on driving.
Well, you're driving. I can barely keep my fingers steady enough to. I tell you what is not a letdown though.
Go on.
The seats.
Oh yeah,
How nice are these seats?
they are good, aren't they?
I think that are they Sabelt? I don't think they're Recaros, are they? In the 110S. And am I right in saying that
Quite sure.
in a normal 110, these are optional? In the S, standard.
I think you get them as standard in the S and on the basic car. On the top spec model, you get like more comfort orientated seats with more adjustment, because these have fixed backrests, which won't be to everyone's taste, but for they're very supportive, you've got to say.
Glad you studied the spec sheets. Whatever you think of the seats though, it's the rest of the car that's special, isn't it?
Certainly is. Like, given the Renault connection, you might expect that this is just a Megane chassis with a curvier body bolted on, but nothing could be further from the truth. Under here is a bespoke sports car chassis made out of aluminium, and so for that matter is pretty much the entire of the rest of the car, and that makes this car very, very rigid and very, very light.
It is. It is worth emphasising the lightness thing, isn't it? What's one of these? 1,100 kilos?
1,100 kilos.
I mean, that's ridiculous.
It's
That
just
is so
nothing
light.
in this day and age. And just as important as the low weight is where all that weight is positioned, because unlike on most cars, all the heavy stuff is positioned between the axles where it should be. The engine's just behind us, ahead of the rear axle, the fuel tank's just in front of us, behind the front axle, and the really lardy bits
Fair point.
are positioned in between, so that gives this car a pretty much optimal weight distribution of 44% on the front axle and 56% on the rear.
And it just doesn't get better than that, does it, for front to rear weight distribution?
Yeah, absolutely. And what also helps immeasurably is that the car's centre of gravity is positioned right about there between my left hip and your right hip. And that centre of gravity is the point about which the car pivots as it turns, so you feel right at the centre of the action on a twisty road like this, and that is such an intoxicating feeling.
It really is, even from the passenger seat actually.
This is just such a pure driving experience. There's so little effort required to change direction. You just give it a little flick of the wrists and bang, you've gone exactly where you've pointed it. And it also helps that the steering is absolutely stuffed with detail and feedback, and it's beautifully weighted. It's just lovely. There's also lots of grip, as you'd expect, but kind of the nice thing is that there's not too much, if you know what I mean. So it's still got that playful, mischievous nature about it. And you know, you can, if you're feeling a bit saucy, you can, you know, change your line on the throttle rather than the steering.
What, saucy, you mean brave?
You'd have to take your brave pills, yeah, but yeah, it's a really, it's very multi-layered, this driving experience. There's lots of different things you can do, and it just keeps rewarding you.
And again, because it's light, when it does move, it's not terrifying.
That's it. It doesn't take a lot to stop it if you so wish. It's one of those cars that you can just get in and drive briskly straight off the bat. You don't have to learn its quirks. You don't have to, you know, figure out how to get the best from it. You just get in and you go, and it's just mighty from the absolute second you get in. And it's worth noting at this point that this is the A110S, which is the raciest version of the A110, and it's got a suspension that's quite a lot lower and quite a lot stiffer. And as a result, it feels quite a lot more focused. In the regular A110, there's quite a bit of body lean as you tip the car into a bend before it settles. And the effect can be quite a laugh, and some people might prefer that kind of comedic response, but this feels a lot pointier and a lot sharper than the regular A110. If that's what you like, this is definitely going to be the version of the car you prefer, but we would say that because the versions are so different of the A110, that if you're going to buy one, we would recommend trying both to see which one you prefer.
I think that is such a key point, because they're so different, aren't they? They really feel very different to drive. Like fundamentally, both brilliant.
Yeah.
Probably, I don't think one is any better than the other, but they really are very different cars.
What I also find really interesting is that I expected those changes to the S's suspension to really scupper the ride, but it just doesn't. I mean, it's got that edge, as you expect, but this is a very comfortable car.
Yeah, I was similarly, in fact, the first sort of half a mile in this was a revelation, and I was expecting to be thumped and bumped down the road. And yeah, definitely it's firmer than a standard car, without a doubt, but it's not uncomfortable by any stretch. And these are bumpy roads now we're on.
They really are, yeah.
Absolutely fine. And then you've got the engine behind you. We haven't really talked about the engine yet.
No, that's mad, isn't it?
Shall I do the honours?
Just
Right,
reel off the stats.
Spec sheet, Natman. So, it's actually, it's a 4-cylinder, it's 1.8 turbo 4-cylinder. It's the engine from the Mach1 RS, which is not a car that's been absolutely heaped with praise in this way that older Renault Sports have, perhaps. But in this car, I tell you what, it works, doesn't it?
It really does. I mean, it's a strong point in the Mach1 as well, to be fair. But here it's even better. Like, there's, you know, you've got your 300 horsepower.
0 to 62 in this car, 4.2 seconds. That's the second fastest car here after the Audi. It is no slouch.
It really isn't. You're certainly not wanting for any pace.
Gearbox, so no manual in the Alpine. We've got this dual clutch, 7-speed. What do you reckon?
It's absolutely spot on. It's fast to respond. It selects the right gear at the first time of asking, each and every time. It's one of those gearboxes that you don't notice it going about its work, and it just blends into the background, and you know, that's just what you want from a good auto.
What do you think of the exhaust on this? Have you done it in sport where you get all the pops and bangs?
Let's have a look. Sport! That's the first time I've done that. That's a 4-cylinder engine, and it sounds that good.
It's a very good point. It is a 4-cylinder engine, and we are talking about spending 60 grand here.
Yes, we are.
And when we're up against a turbo 5-cylinder, naturally aspirated V8, is 4 cylinders enough?
I mean, I'm not sitting here wishing I had some more.
I think on paper, it's more of a problem than it is in reality. In reality, actually, I don't think it's a problem at all, because it just sounds fantastic, this engine. It can be theatrical with all the pops and bangs.
If you look at it in terms of its direct rivals, I know we're not testing it against proper direct rivals, we're kind of mixing it up a bit. Well, I'm going to say Cayman. And that's the thing, like, the Cayman comes with a 4-cylinder engine as well, unless you go for the GT4. And I'd say that doesn't sound anywhere near as good as this.
Yeah, agreed. Clearing its throat. Well, we should start with talking about the first thing that you have to talk about when you drive a Mustang. Cup holders. Didn't get them in the Alpine, did you?
You didn't, actually. No.
I am joking, of course. It's the engine. So, 5 litre, naturally aspirated V8.
Absolutely.
And it's just pretty much defines the whole car, doesn't it?
Absolutely does.
I think. So this is the Mach1. 460 horsepower. You're going to have to help me with stats here, because as we shall talk about, driving a Mustang is a fairly involved process.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, do concentrate. 460 horsepower, which is only 10 more horsepower than the regular V8 GT. So not a massive amount more power.
It's the same as in the Bullet, isn't it, this engine?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I don't feel like I need any more power.
No. I think having any more would probably be remiss, to be fair.
And 0 to 62, so a lot more power than the Alpine. 160 horsepower, pretty much, more than the Alpine. And yet, slower 0 to 62. Quite a lot slower, 4.8 seconds.
It's 4.8, although it is, the deficit is cut to 0.2 seconds if you specify the optional automatic gearbox, so that does make it a bit quicker.
Okay, and that is because this manual, I mean, it's as meaty as a butcher's shop, isn't it? It is ridiculous.
It is. It feels like a pickup truck gear shift.
Yeah, I quite like it though, and
it suits the car, doesn't it?
It's you nailed it. It really, everything in this car feels exactly right for this car, which I know sounds a bit stupid, but in the same way that the Alpine is light and nimble and just feels so energetic, this thing just feels big and wafty and brutish, yeah, that's the word. But it does go, doesn't it? The thing about this engine, you sort of expect it to be all about the low down torque, and it's got loads of low down torque, and it's also got incredible throttle response.
Yeah, absolutely.
But actually it revs as well, doesn't it?
It does. It's one of those engines that just, it rewards you more and more the harder you work it.
Yeah, it's pretty epic.
And
it's stupidly loud.
And that noise. Should we just shut up for 10 seconds and just enjoy it?
Enjoy the engine.
Of course, the other thing that's brutish about the Mustang, there's no getting away from it, is the weight of the thing.
That's so heavy, isn't it? What is it compared with the Alpine?
So Alpine's 1,100 kilos. This thing is, as near as makes no difference, 750 kilos heavier. than the Alpine.
Wow.
So that's 10 of you, probably more like 6 or 7 of me, thanks to that bad boy.
That's very generous of you. I'll tell you what it is. When I was 17, I had a Citroen AX GT, and that weighed about 750 kilos.
Yeah.
So this is like driving an Alpine with a Citroen AX GT on the roof.
That's true.
I mean, we're on tremendous roads here. They are wet and bumpy and a bit greasy.
Yeah, good luck with that.
And all I can say is, I'm glad we're here for a couple of days, because if nothing else, it means I got a spare pair of underwear. Oh, sounds so good. Okay, so we've got adaptive dampers on the Mach1, but also the springs are stiffer as well.
That's right.
Which you read and you think, whoa, I hope they haven't ruined the Mustang's lovely, pliant ride. I don't reckon they have. I think it's still a comfortable car, isn't it?
It is. You can feel a slight bit of extra lumpiness, but there's, you know, it stops well short of being uncomfortable. It's actually, I drove it down here some of the way, and it's absolutely lovely on the motorway.
Okay, yeah.
Really, really nice.
And I'll tell you what it does as well, over the standard car, it's a bit like an A110S Alpine compared with the standard car. It just feels more tied down.
It is.
I'm not sure, as you know, I think we were saying both of us would probably have a standard Mustang over this. I'm not sure it transforms it enough to justify the price, but it definitely feels more tied down.
It certainly does, yeah. And it's not just the suspension that they've thrown at it either. They've all sorts of modifications that have been applied. I've got a list of them here. So where are we?
You couldn't remember off the top of your head.
Absolutely not. Certainly not while you're chucking this round anyway. So all this new componentry.
Can't hear you.
Stiffer anti-roll bars, subframes, torque sensing limited slip diff. I'm going to be sick in a minute. Extra bracing, upgraded brakes, additional cooling, recalibrated steering, wider wheels and tyres, and a whole bunch of new aero.
It is a silly car.
It's really
preposterous. Oh, it moves around, even at fairly moderate speeds.
Well, this is the thing. It's such a handful. There is so much movement going on, sort of up and down, side to side, just while you're trying to plot your course, and it's got way more power than either of our other two cars, but I think you actually get across country more slowly.
Yeah. Oh, I feel like I've had a workout. We spoke in the Alpine a lot about the steering in that car. This car, I mean, the steering's fine.
Yeah.
You can change the weight of it with a toggle. And if you go in comfort, it's still got a little bit of weight to it.
Yeah.
But put it through to sport, and it's like a wrestling match.
Is it?
It's so much to it.
It's slightly slow to react, I found, when I was driving it earlier.
Yeah.
The initial responses could be a bit sharper, but you kind of expect that in a car like this, don't you? It's by no means a deal breaker.
Yeah, and there's it's not tremendous feel or anything like that. It's so hard, isn't it? When you come from an Alpine, and then you get in something,
it's like you said, it's fine. It's just, if you're going as fast as this thing has the potential to go, you might want a little bit more in the way of help and feedback.
Yeah.
Having said all that though, while you're chucking this thing around, I'm starting to wish there was a bit more side support in these seats, because they're not all that supportive, I'm thinking. They're a bit flat and the lumbar's a bit rubbish, I think.
They feel very exec car, really, don't they? I think the seat, you wouldn't sort of expect them to find them in a sports car.
That's
particularly.
it, yeah. I mean, otherwise it's pretty much standard Mustang in here, isn't it? You've got the chunky buttons that are sort of quite big and easy to hit at a glance, even though the toggle switches are quite rubbish, we have to say. And you've got this touchscreen. It's easy enough to use, but I think it's fair to say it looks pretty dated, doesn't it?
I can't look at it. I have to concentrate.
All right, take it from me, the graphics are pretty dated.
Yeah, it's never been great, has it, the Mustang interior, let's be honest. No.
I mean, it's not a poor quality cabin by any stretch, but yeah, if you're looking for the last word in poshness, then you've come to the wrong place, really. Like, you could say in a regular Mustang, the interior quality is probably a shade disappointing. When this thing's costing an extra 10, 11 grand on top, that disappointment becomes more real, doesn't it? So here we are in the Audi. Let's kick off by talking about quality, because that is, after all, what Audi is renowned for. So what do we think on that score?
Well, I think it's got the highest quality interior of the three cars here, but ironically, I don't think this interior is as nice as the previous gen A3. In fact, I had a 1 litre Sportback of the previous gen where the little screen slid out.
Yeah.
That was a way nicer interior than this.
I
Way
would
nicer.
100% agree with that. There are some nice bits, but there are some bits that are pretty disappointing in quality. Like, case for the prosecution, Exhibit A,
Yeah.
Exhibit B,
Yeah.
Exhibit C, Exhibit D. Like,
Yeah, I'm glad you got to the door cards.
that's just not what you expect to see in an Audi, and a 60 grand Audi at that.
Yeah, agreed. However, the digital dials, I think, on an
Yeah.
Audi, the virtual cockpit is still the best digital dial system on the market.
Yeah, they are really good. And obviously, because it's a hatchback, compared to our two coupe rivals here, the rear visibility is way better as well. So that's another tick in its box, I think.
Yeah, and then touchscreen, again, easily the best of the three cars, in a different league, really. But again, not to hark back to the last one, but I really miss that little rotary controller.
That's so
For
much less distracting.
Yeah, so much easier to control.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really responsive. The graphics look fab. It's as touchscreens go, it's an excellent system. It's just still not as good as the dial from way back when. Is it?
And my other gripe is, and we will say some nice things about this car in a minute, when you go into the RS performance mode, one of about 54 different driving modes you can have in this car, the dials go into a configuration that is hard to imagine is of any use to anyone at any time. It was like they were told they had to have a new configuration for RS mode, so they just came up with something.
Yeah, we'll put that there and put that there.
But all those things aside, there is a lot to like about this car as well.
Yeah, there is.
And candidate number one has to be the 5-cylinder turbocharged.
It's still there.
Ah.
It's still there from the old car, and it is still a highlight. It's not actually any more powerful than it was in the previous RS3, but it does have a little bit more torque, and both the power and the torque are served up a little bit more readily. So with 400 horsepower, it's 100 horsepower up on the Alpine, but 60 horsepower down on the Mustang.
And yet this is the fastest car here, isn't it?
Absolutely it is. 0 to 62, 3.8 seconds, and that is supercar pace no matter how you dress it up. And here we've got it in a family hatchback, which is completely bonkers. A couple of reasons for that level of pace. Firstly, weight. It's quite a lot lighter than the more powerful Mustang, although it is closer to the Mustang than it is to the Alpine. Secondly, it sends its power to all four wheels rather than just the rear, so it gets its power down a lot more effectively off the mark.
And it feels quick as well. And it's not just a numbers thing. This car feels rapid with a capital R.
Every ounce of that, it really does. And that applies either off the mark or when you're picking up speed on the move. I mean, even low down in the rev range, it feels very flexible indeed, but when you get a few revs on the dial, it just Oh, just picks up and it goes.
It's awesome, isn't it?
No mucking about.
And I love that they've kept with the 5-cylinder in this, because I know it must have been tempting to put in a 4-cylinder for emissions and everything else.
Yeah, exactly.
But it makes the car, you know,
It really
does make the car. It's fantastic.
Point to point, this thing, and you know, Ferraris, McLarens included, there are not many things that will beat this point to point. It is absolutely mighty. It really is.
Is it fun though? Because when the first RS3 came out, I did the launch of that. We went to Monaco. It was awesome in the sense that it was this 5-cylinder hot, you know, it was amazing for that. Yet not really a great deal of fun, that car. Really inert handling.
Yeah, I agree.
Which I don't think is the case with this one. I think it's come on an awfully long way.
This is head and shoulders better than previous iterations of the RS3, and I think there are a couple of reasons for that. The main one is there's a new gizmo on the rear axle called the torque splitter, and what that does is under hard cornering it sends drive torque to the outside rear wheel, and that's designed to reduce understeer, which was the big problem with the previous RS3, and make the car generally feel more agile. And on the evidence of what we're experiencing here, it's really worked, because this, I mean, understeer isn't completely eliminated, but it does feel a lot pointier and a lot more eager to turn than that previous RS3 did. And I'd also give special mention in this car to the suspension, because it is tremendous. I mean, this car has the adaptive suspension that is standard on the Vorsprung, the range topping model, but it's optional on the others. But if you're going to buy one of these, honestly, this is well worth the investment, because if you dial in the cushiest modes, it wafts you along so nicely. It's such a sweet riding car. And then even when you put it in the sportiest modes, you can feel everything hunker down, and you know, you get that greater sense of connection with the road, but it's still really comfortable. It doesn't ruin it in any way. It's just still really nice.
It feels, when I was driving it earlier, I was thinking, when you put these things in their top mode, quite often there'll be like a track mode, and it's just too much for the road, whereas this feels like the top mode is a fast road mode.
Absolutely.
And I think it's all the better for it.
And then the comfort mode is another level of comfort on top of that.
Yeah. So the engine's great, right?
The engine's brilliant. The suspension's brilliant.
It's got a sports exhaust.
Yes.
I think even in the full beans RS mode, it could be a little bit louder. I know we've been in the Mustang, and that's an incredibly loud and dramatic car, but I just wonder if this could be a little bit louder.
The engine sounds sensational. The quality of the sound is beautiful. It's got that lovely, characterful, sort of offbeat 5-cylinder thrum about it. But like you say, there should be at least one bonkers mode where it just dials the noise up to 11. It really needs that, I think. And the other thing I'd say about the fun aspect of this car, and it is really fun, it's brilliant. However, the controls generally are just a little bit subdued and a little bit remote, and just don't quite have that level of sensation that you're after. And the steering's the biggest culprit. It's the weighting's fine. There's probably the initial responses are a tiny bit slow, but again, the speed of it's fine. It's just, it doesn't give you that extra little layer of feedback that you want to really finish the dynamic experience off in this car.
Yeah, there's none of that little chatter, is there? You don't feel what's going on.
It's fine. It just could be so much better, and it would be the icing on the cake of this car, because it's so brilliant in so many other ways. That's just the one little bit where it falls short.
So if you're taking someone for a spin in an RS3 and they've never been in one before, and there's one thing that you can do to demonstrate what this car can do, it has to be a launch, right?
It does.
Because this car launches like nothing else.
Let's give it a whirl.
Let's do it.
So put it there. We're in the right mode. Right.
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Oh!
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
That hurt.
That's quite impressive.
I thought my eyeballs were going to come out of their sockets then. Wow.
Well, there's a very good reason for buying an Audi RS3, regardless of anything else.
Never mind the steering, my goodness. That was actually painful. I've got to admit, that's pretty intoxicating, that.
Yeah. So the Mustang will launch as well.
It will, yeah.
But it's a different kind of launch.
Yeah.
It's
The Mustang will line lock as well, so
yeah.
it'll lock the fronts and allow you to spin up the rears to heat up your rear tyres to get a better start on drag strips, because you're obviously going to do that on the way to Sainsbury's, aren't you?
Yeah.
But yeah, there's no shortage of gimmickry, is there, with our 3 cars? But I think what we've just experienced shows that it's there's certainly a place for gimmickry, I think.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. That is fun. That is definitely fun. Oh, I really need to see my breakfast here, you know.
So, deliberation time. Where do we start?
I think actually we should start kind of where we've begun and talk about why we're here, which is to look at fun cars.
Yeah.
Because, pat on the back, Ivan, you chose these 3. I think we've got 3 really good fun cars, completely different, but all really good fun.
They all nail the brief, don't they?
Yeah, they nail it in different ways, but they're great. But it is a test. We do need a winner.
Let's start talking about the Audi, and I think if you get your kicks from outright pace, that is the car you choose, because it is the fastest car here, both in terms of acceleration and point-to-point cross-country. It is phenomenally fast.
It's outrageously fast. I mean, I can't think of many cars actually that on a cross-country run, particularly if it's wet.
Short of a Ferrari or a McLaren, there's not much out there that will live with that at all.
Yeah, and all the more remarkable, therefore, that it's also the most practical of our 3 cars. And yet, it's not the winner, is it?
If there's any ounce of sensible in your decision, that is the car you go for without a shadow of a doubt. But it does deliver on fun, completely and utterly, but I just can't help feeling it could deliver on it a tiny bit better than it does. It's the best RS3 there's ever been, and it's got that agility that previous versions of the car were missing, but it's still got those sort of remote, inert feeling controls, particularly the steering, that just rob you of that last little bit of sensation, and as a result, it's just not quite as engaging as it could be. It's a little bit of a shame. And it is so much fun still, don't get me wrong, but it's so nearly an absolutely brilliant thing.
If we're saying this is perhaps just a tiny bit too remote, let's talk about the car that couldn't be any more in your face if there was a fist that came out of the steering wheel and punched you. The Mach1.
Yeah.
I mean, what a thing.
It's all about the engine with this car, and it's a noise you are never going to get tired of without a shadow of a doubt.
Agreed. It is. There's just something about it, isn't there, the Mustang? I mean, it's just... I feel like you could turn up at your friend's house in one of these and probably 90% of the people wouldn't know what it was. You could go in one of those and probably 80% would think it was a normal A3. You turn up in that, they know you're in a Mustang.
There's just something glamorous, and there's some romance about it somehow, isn't there? What is it, do you think? Is it the looks? Is it the icon status? Whatever it is, you're never going to get tired of that either, are you?
Agreed. However. Yeah. There it is.
It's just such a handful on a road that isn't arrow straight. It's brilliant on a road that is arrow straight, and it is fun on one that isn't. But it's just such a demanding car, quite an intimidating car to drive quickly.
I don't know what you're talking about. I was fine. I didn't even notice it.
And there's just so much movement as you're just trying to plot a course along the road. It just feels like driving a car that's fighting back, just because there's so much physics happening. And it's a very good muscle car, and if a muscle car is what you want, you will absolutely adore this thing. It just gets left behind a little bit, I think.
Yeah, it's a whole load of fun. It's a very different kind of fun to the fun that we're going to have in
Absolutely.
the last car to talk about.
Absolutely.
What a car. Right? Isn't this just...
It's a heck of a thing, isn't it?
I feel like we set this 60,000 budget, and I think we've got 3 of the most fun cars. I'm sure people will say in the comments there are other cars. Please do let us know.
Yep.
But I think regardless of budget, I think that would be in the running. It's just stonking.
The way it improves the level of engagement of the standard A110, which was already amazing, and it enhances it, but without ruining the ride, is just beggars belief.
It's witchcraft.
And even for most drivers, I think that extra power alone is going to be worth the extra money you pay.
Yeah, and I would also say, by the definition of fun, if we're talking about what most people are going to find fun in a car, that yes, there are some people who will find just pure pace fun. There are some people who will find the noise and the drama fun.
And for those people, absolutely go ahead and buy those cars and love them and enjoy them. But
if it's pure driving thrills, if that is where your fun is, it's the one, isn't it?
That is the one.
Speaking of which, I might take it if that's all right.